Tuesday, February 25th, 2020, Shelburne Selectboard meeting, which I now call to order. The first item is to approve the agenda. I do have one change, and that is to eliminate number 12, at least as I enumerated them. That would be the Charles and Ann Joseph late tax payment penalty waiver request for reconsideration, which we have rescheduled to March 10. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Mike moves to approve.
Second.
Mary seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. Thank you, Mary. And once again, for those of you who have recently arrived, we have two members who are not going to be present tonight, nor will they participate by phone. Mary is participating by phone. The next item are to approve the meeting minutes of February 11.
I have no changes, so I would move to approve.
Mary moves approval.
I'll second that.
Mike seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mary. And the next item are public comments. Hearing none, seeing no hands. The item following are select board comments. I'll lead off. Mine are very brief. One is to remember we vote a week from today, on the 3rd. And secondly, to call your attention to the town report, which is out, and which Lee, Nina, Sue, and Peter did a fantastic job with. We've had many complimentary comments already. I urge you to pick up one and read it and enjoy. Mike?
I would just add that I encourage people to come to the town meeting on Monday evening. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Mary?
Nothing to add other than what Mike said. I would urge people to come as well. It is fun.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, we have a welcome to a new business, in this case, the Shelburne Shipyard. Mark Lurvy is with us tonight, which we appreciate, and we're eager to hear a few words from you about the corporate background and what you may be planning, and otherwise, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you.
It's our habit that in order for the viewing audience at home, we need to use mics, and you'll need to let the audience know who you are. Okay?
Yep. My name is Mark Lurvy. I am the general manager for Shelburne Shipyard. Oh, thank you. And I am now employed by the new owners, Safe Harbor. Safe Harbor, if you don't know, is a corporation from Dallas, Texas. They own 97 marinas currently. And so I'm not a Safe Harbor guy. I was hired by Mary just prior to the sale. Basically, Safe Harbor brought me out to Arizona, and I got to be exposed a little bit to the corporation, and I had some preconceived notions what that might be like. And what I found was a lot of boat people in the room. Jack Brewer built 26 marinas on his own. A real gentleman who cares about people, real old school principles. I had some meals with the CEO and the CFOs, and they seem like a corporation with a heart. So that's good news. In terms of what they're hoping to do, is they would like to start with cleaning up the yard. There's a lot of junk boats there. And so the good news is when Safe Harbor purchases a property, they have budgets set aside to do these things. So the first order of business would be to clean up a lot of the debris that over the years has been collected, clean up the dead boats, clean up the yard, trash. Personally, I would like to see the entrance cleaned up, no more masts stored out front, and just bring it back to pretty again. They'd like to paint buildings. They'd like to redo bathrooms. They would like to change signs and maybe even look at some repair to the shoreline at some point, going through a civil engineer or associates, maybe, perhaps Jack. Other than that, I know that they would like to be completely in compliance with everything that they need to be in compliance with. So I would imagine that I may be speaking with you all a lot. That's kind of a quick overview.
Do they have another facility in the region or on the lake or?
Yes, they purchased Willsboro on the New York side.
Oh,
They purchased Gaines in Rouse's Point, New York. And so I think they purchased those two properties just before they purchased from Mary. So
are they freshwater oriented?
yes. Well, I should say they have marinas in saltwater areas also.
Oh, okay.
So I think that the Vermont climate is going to be an education. Yeah.
It's not quite up to title, but it's going to be close, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Well, we welcome them and certainly are pleased at your continuing role. And as I'm sure you've learned from Lee, we're going to be very interested to help in any way we can
Appreciate that.
to see the new season off to a success. So,
Thank you.
and we appreciate your coming. Would anyone else like to ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Will you be working only at this marina or doing things for the other?
Personally, I'll be only working at this marina. Yeah, I'm responsible for this property. So, yeah.
Mary, do you have a question for Mark?
No, I don't. Just, Mark, thank you for coming. I know how busy you are and what long hours you keep, so I appreciate you coming in the evening to share these changes with us.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Mark. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The next item is the town manager report.
Thanks. Well, I'd like to echo again the mention about the town report. I hope everyone finds it helpful and informative, and I thank all those staff who worked hard to help bring that to fruition. And the printer did a great job on a very short time frame as well. And again, echoing town meeting next Monday night. Dinner is at 5:30, be served by Cucina Antica. And then there'll be conversation with our state representatives, and then, of course, town meeting at 7:30 and voting all day the next day. I'd like to recognize our library director, Kevin Unrath, who was just elected to be the vice president of the Vermont Libraries Association and likely the incoming president later this year.
Wow.
And many folks have been following the saga of the dog park in Shelburne and our long-running and successful negotiations with the state of Vermont. We are on the verge of filing that wetlands application, getting that resolved, put to bed so that we can keep the dog park where it is with some minor changes to its current systems. But we've come a long way with the state of Vermont from prohibition and removal to being able to keep it and even keep some of the improvements in place. So pleased, we're getting much closer to bringing that to a successful end.
Can I ask, Lee, just out of curiosity, will there be a long-term kind of agreement in place or a memorandum of understanding, or how will that be formalized?
It'll be formalized officially with an actual wetland, what's called a wetlands permit from the state of Vermont. There's no actual disruption to any wetlands. The front entranceway, the path that leads to the front gate, is within a wetland buffer.
Right.
So they're going to let us keep that. We'll abandon the secondary path that kind of came in from the side by the Ty Hall
Yeah.
path. They're requiring that we move the northern boundary, the fence, 100 feet inboard, which will shorten the length of that park to a certain extent, and then that area has to be left to regrow naturally. But we'll be able to retain the use of virtually the entire park. We will be able to keep the water supply there,
Oh, that's
which was an
awesome.
important piece.
Yeah.
The shed that was moved out of there, the maintenance shed, that needs to stay out of the park, but we can keep the waste receptacles and the benches as long as they're just sitting on the ground and not on footings into the earth.
So the shed will be completely gone from the site?
The shed is close by, but off-site,
Oh, okay.
and so that can remain where it is. It's
Oh,
just
that's
out
good.
of the area,
Yeah.
but it's close enough to be useful if needed. We're not supposed to be able to do any vegetation management, so the shed was there primarily for tools
Right.
that now we probably can't use too much of.
Right. Well, that's
But
great.
the use of the park when it's restored will help do that naturally.
Yeah. Great.
Good for you.
So
It's been
good progress
almost a year,
all
hasn't it?
around.
It's been a long, good for you.
So we're moving on.
Any questions, any discussion? Hearing none, the next item is a public hearing on proposed stormwater ordinance and related documents. Do you want to, we need to move to initiate the hearing, correct?
Yes, please.
So I'll move to open the hearing on the proposed stormwater ordinance.
Mike moves.
Second?
Mary seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The hearing is underway.
Thank you. So many of you come to virtually every meeting, which is wonderful, so you'll be familiar with the information presented, and I won't spend a whole lot of time going through this, but just giving kind of, again, an overview, since this is the formal public hearing on these proposals, which, as everyone knows, have been in process now for several years. And the reason that we're dealing with this at all is that we are under strict state and federal mandates to improve our management of stormwater. And I think we're all familiar with what stormwater is. We develop land, it creates impervious surface, stormwater runs off, and it has to go somewhere. Sometimes it flows onto undeveloped land and can soak into the land naturally. Sometimes it goes into storm drains, which may, in some cases, end up in the lake. So we have a whole host of built infrastructure, drainage pipes and culverts, storm drains. In many cases, there are infiltration practices built into parking lots or other areas that capture the stormwater and again allow it to filter more naturally into the ground rather than just running off as sheet flow somewhere else. Sometimes it runs into wetland areas, or it may run into rain gardens, which are small-scale ways of trying to capture rainwater in certain areas where it can make sense. Again, it's now a highly regulated issue by state and federal mandates, and we are under some strict requirements, as are many other municipalities, to find better ways to manage it, reduce both the volume of runoff to the lake and, in particular, the amount of phosphorus that runs off into the lake. We already operate under an array of stormwater requirements. We have 13 permits that are so-called MS4, municipal non-MS4, sorry. So examples of one or two of these that we currently have?
We have some in Boulder Hill, we have some on John Street, we have scattered throughout the town. Just to give you an idea.
Thanks. So some of the practices that we do, we might have to mow areas, we clean out storm drains, we contract with South Burlington to do that, remove sediment from the storm drains so that doesn't clog things up. And as Chris knows all too well, lots of paperwork is involved with all of these permits. And we get bills from the state. We have to pay fees in order to be allowed to do this kind of work. So the dollars tumble, unfortunately, fairly rapidly. And then we have these other permits called MS4, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. Unlike some other more urban municipalities, we do not have a combined sewer and stormwater system. So stormwater is entirely separate from the sewer system. But it requires that we do these things, public education and outreach, involve the public, keep searching for discharges into the system that aren't supposed to be there, like residential gutters are not supposed to drain into the public system. Managing runoff on construction sites, managing it after construction, and just overall good housekeeping and trying to run a clean ship. Part of this also relates to what's called a flow restoration plan. Monroe Brook flows through Shelburne, and it's considered an impaired watershed, so that adds more requirements onto us as to what flows into that brook or what we need to prevent from flowing into the brook. Just a map showing the watershed. A watershed is an area topographically where water all drains down into somewhere. The flow restoration plan just for Monroe Brook area includes 34 stormwater treatment projects. 10 have been built, 22 still need to be built. 4 of them are in South Burlington, so that they are not our responsibility to be done. But there's still 18 of these projects that we need to complete by the year 2031. Obviously, you can't wait till 2028 to start figuring this out, and that's why we're here now. Some of these are public projects, some are private projects, and then the question is always, which we all face and all fear, is how do we pay for these things? There are 2 primary ways that municipalities can do it. You can just put it on the tax burden, and property taxpayers would have to pay their share of that. It's easy to collect. We already send property tax bills, so it just gets added into the town budget. We have had a line item in the municipal budget over the past several years. You don't notice it because it's just part of your bill, but it is subject to other priorities and needs. So you have an overall town budget, you have designated line items, but if you run into some trouble, you may need to take money from one line to pay for another. So the risk of having stormwater as a part of the overall budget is, can we actually keep that money dedicated for that purpose? The other approach is as a user fee. It's considered to be more equitable because in many cases it's based on the actual amount of impervious or hard surface that you have on your property. And it also includes properties that are otherwise tax exempt. So it's spreading the financial burden over every piece of land in town, not just those who are property taxpayers today. It also creates a dedicated fund, so it can't be, you can't rob Peter to pay Paul for that case. When you set up a utility, the money that goes into it has to be used for that purpose. We can design it in a way that meets our needs, and this new proposal, as many of you have heard a couple times now, we have modified it since version 1 to try to be Shelburne specific and address concerns raised by some major landowners. It does create an incentive to reduce impervious land area where that's possible. It does make things more difficult. There's a lot of front-end work that has to be done to add in a billing structure when you're billing everybody across the board and running the calculations that apply. You can see that in Shelburne there is a fair amount of tax-exempt property. This isn't intended to be punitive in any way, but it just shows on a big picture basis how many properties are being brought into the fold that will be helping to fund the stormwater utility. The other aspect, again, of equitability, it spreads the load out. This is just a pie chart showing, for example, total land area by land use. Residential was 40%, but impervious area on residential is 37%. So this is dealing a little more just not by land use, but by how much impervious is actually existing, especially on non-residential properties. So again, it's similar to a sewer, water utility, electric utility. In general, the more stormwater you generate, the more you will pay. Although, as you'll see on the residential side, we're proposing a flat fee, trying to keep that simple and reasonable for everyone. On the non-residential side, the amount of impervious surface data is calculated by use of satellite imagery, which is run through a geographic information system computer analysis, and it can give a fairly accurate representation of what actually it represents impervious area on a property. Again, we're not doing that for the several thousand residential properties. It's not worth the work involved, and we're proposing a flat rate on residential. Won't get too far into this, but when you figure out how do you charge people, you need some mathematical basis for it. So it sounds a little tech nerdy, but most municipalities are using this construct called an equivalent residential unit as the base billing unit. In Shelburne, at this point, the best estimates we have are that the median amount of impervious area on a single-family residential property is roughly 4,200 square feet. The median meaning half the properties have more than that, half the properties have less. So that becomes the basis for the calculation. There are round figures, 8,000 equivalent residential units in the total town, 2,100 of these residential, roughly 3,600 non-residential, and there's a fair amount of these that are town roads. I mean, we have to pay into this too. The estimates right now are that most single-family residential properties would pay less than $75 per year. Again, it's an estimate, but to give you a round number of what we're looking at and what the impact would be on most single-family residential properties. There are roughly, we've set up a threshold where there would be those with less than 1 acre of impervious and those with more than 1 acre. And you'll recall that the idea of a two-tiered system was to try to create a little more equity comparing small properties to those very large properties with lots of impervious area. There are only about 15 residential properties that have more than 1 acre. As you might imagine, most people's with their homes don't have a whole lot of driveway and house attached to it. So again, we're estimating less than $75 a year for most residential properties. The ones with more than 1 acre would be paying more than that, certainly. And commercial properties are going to be analyzed for their actual impervious area, and the amount will be calculated. Next year's budget as proposed, that we'll be discussing at town meeting next week, estimates that the total stormwater budget would be $401,000. $206,000 of that would be on the tax base as it was this past year, built into the tax rate. The other amount would be estimated to be brought in by the utility, and we are proposing to phase in the utility over a 3-year time frame to lessen sticker shock, if you will, so that people have a chance to get used to the fee. And also that for non-residential properties, they will be eligible for credits based on their ability to manage stormwater on site. And we recognize there will be costs to them to either design and construct their own systems or to hire engineers to prove that what they already have meets the standards. So again, that's another reason we're phasing it in, so we're not hitting those properties too hard in the first couple of years. Again, real round numbers, this so-called ERU rate estimated in Shelburne would be $4.31 per ERU, and the commercial side would be figuring out how many of these ERUs they have based on how much impervious. And as you can see, we're kind of right in the middle compared to our neighbors. South Burlington's fee right now is far higher than that. Burlington's is somewhat less, but they're grappling with that as well. We'll be right in range with Williston and Colchester. These are municipalities in the county that already have these utilities in place. The reason for this equivalency, if you will, is recognizing that no manner of measurement is going to be precise, and nobody's going to be hiring surveyors to actually calculate to the actual square foot. So we're trying to work with round numbers and estimates to be reasonable and fair without burdening either property owners or the town with undue administrative costs. It's also been a system that has worked elsewhere. Just by, again, these are estimates, but giving one example on a commercial property, if the property's a little over 25,000 square feet in total and 18,000 of it is impervious, that would be building, parking lot, driveway. So roughly 3/4 of that property is considered impervious surface. So you run the math, they would estimate roughly they'd have 5 of these so-called ERUs on their property. The annual fee would calculate out roughly to $260. Many commercial properties are much larger than that or might have much more impervious area, but for a smaller commercial property, we're hoping that the numbers work out to be manageable for everyone involved. Again, so there are 3 documents in this proposal. One is the actual ordinance itself. There's also a separate credit manual which describes how non-residential properties can earn credits, and there are various categories of those. If you can demonstrate you are following smart agricultural practices, you can earn credits because the stormwater is being managed on site. If you have an educational program in place dealing with stormwater management, that can earn some credits. And of course, water quality improvements made on site. If you build some systems to manage your stormwater, you will earn credits as well. So if you're doing the right thing on your own property, then you don't have to pay as much into the system because you're dealing with it on site. The reason we're not building credits into the residential side is, number one, there are several thousand residential properties. And as you can see, if the fee for most residential properties is less than $75 a year, the amount of work needed on the homeowner side as well as the town side to try to ratchet that down some marginal amount, it's just simply not worth the effort on everyone's part. But it might be well worth it on a non-residential property if you have a lot of impervious area. So we've already been through some of this, the 1 acre threshold for residential properties. Non-residential properties based on the actual amount of impervious or estimated amount. And we're proposing to phase this in over a 3-year cycle. So this would, if it's approved this spring, this winter, legally it would go into effect on July 1. The actual billing cycle wouldn't start until the fall of next year because of all the work needed on the front end to build this into the billing system. So year 1 would be 33% of the normal rate, year 2, 66%, and then year 3, it would hit the full rate. So based on our rough estimates for single-family residential, the first year would be roughly $20. As mentioned, we made a number of adjustments from the first version of these documents. And by the way, the third document is a set of technical standards, and those relate to the water quality improvements. Those are the sorts of things. If you're going to build a system on your own property, here are the standards you need to meet. And in many cases, property owners with more than 3 acres of impervious are going to have to meet various state or federal permit standards anyway, even if we did nothing. So we increased the educational credit, we increased the agricultural credit, we increased the total possible maximum credit. It's unlikely that any one landowner could actually earn 75% credit. But by allowing flexibility in various categories, somebody might be able to earn more in one area than another. And again, these were intended to try to address concerns raised by some major landowners in town last year. And as noted in our recent meeting, the Stormwater Committee that got back together, worked on this for a year, endorsed this system unanimously.
What do you mean by educational credits? It says the total maximum credit for education, agriculture. Is that not talking about schools?
No, but for example, if Shelburne Farms, which is expanding its approach to life to not just be strictly about history, but also about art, and if they embraced and started offering some information and had some informational kiosks and a program helping to educate people about stormwater, then they might qualify for that credit. Similarly, as you may be aware, they are hoping to get state permits for 2 solar arrays, one of which would be a smaller array closer to the main property, if you will, and they're hoping to use that as a bit of education as well about renewable energy.
Okay.
So it's not so much aimed at schools per se, but any entity that might choose to create some
Right.
sort of informative educational program.
Good.
And again, as we've discussed before, over time, as the fees from the utilities start to increase over that 3-year phasing in, the hope is that the burden on the tax rate itself will start to proportionally decrease, because hopefully we won't need that much money from the tax base as we embrace it from all property owners. So Chris Robinson is our water quality superintendent. He manages our wastewater treatment facilities as well as stormwater. It's a heavy lift on both sides, and he's not here with us tonight. He will be here at our next meeting on March 24 when we continue the hearing. Tom DiPietro, Deputy Director of Public Works in South Burlington, has been an enormously helpful and valuable resource helping us through this entire process. So that's my presentation. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Lee.
Lee, were we planning, we had talked briefly about doing some sort of presentation at town meeting day. Is this what you had in mind, or we were gonna introduce the idea?
Yes, Jerry and I have been talking. We will do some form of presentation at
No,
town
that's-
meeting, whether you think this length and style would be helpful or something somewhat more condensed.
Okay.
But yes, I've been talking with the moderator, so we'll have a little time under other business to present stormwater, as well as to give an update about the fire rescue property and where that's headed over the past year.
Great. Can I ask, I always have questions at the end, and I can't remember if I've asked some of them before. Can I just ask a few?
Of course.
So people have asked, and I'm not quite sure how to answer this, people have said, you're adding $75 to my taxes in the long run. But my response is always, no, we're actually transferring from a line item to a utility. So essentially, you're not paying more, you're just paying it in a different way. Is that correct?
Well, it's certainly going to be a blend, at least over the first 3
First three.
years. And I can't stand here today and guarantee that there would never still be some amount of money on the tax rate. The unfortunate piece of that answer is we have to do these things.
Right, no, I get that.
And I don't mean to sound like a bureaucrat, because those who know me know that's the last kind of impression I ever want to give.
Yeah,
But we are under these state and federal mandates as a municipality, as are others.
But-
So
but in-
somehow we have to do these things. And it will be a bit of an add to someone's burden, there's no doubt.
so the amount of money we're gonna generate through the utility will be more than what we have in our line item currently.
Correct, because this fiscal year, we have 206,000 built into the tax rate.
Right,
Next year, we'll flatline that, it'll still be 206,000, but adding in the utility, but again, at that 30% rate on a residential property, we're estimating roughly $20 the first year, 40 the second, 60 the third. Again, those are estimates,
yeah.
but that's the realm and the range of burden that we're hoping will shake out for single-family residential properties.
Okay. Who will do the billing and collection? Will it be the water department?
It will be through our existing systems.
Mhm.
So finance, Peter, Candy, Betty Jean. It is a heavy lift to build this into the system because it's not as simple as taxes, where you own a discrete property, it has a value, do the calcs, here's the number.
Right,
When you have homeowners associations and condominium associations with some shared infrastructure, and then all the
Tax exempt.
tax exempt are getting added in, so that's a
Right.
new add into the system that doesn't relate to property taxes,
right.
water billing, or sewer billing.
right.
And then the calculations needed on the commercial side. So it's a heavy lift to build that into the
Yeah.
billing system. It doesn't just happen
And
checking
it'll
a
be,
box.
it'll be quarterly?
It would be sent quarterly with the water and sewer bills,
Right.
yes.
Can residents appeal their calculated costs? And I thought I saw that non-residential can appeal, or there is an appeal process, but I didn't see one for residents.
There is an appeal process. I'd have to double check for sure, but since residential is being considered in this structure as a flat rate,
Mhm.
I'm not sure.
So
It
it's a
would-
class, you know.
What you'd
If you
appeal.
appealed, you'd be
Yeah.
appealing the class, the whole class.
Yeah, if somebody said, I live in a 10 by 10 hut,
Right,
and I'm
yeah.
paying the median, why do I have to do that? I'm just curious if they have any recourse. I was just wondering. The other question I had in terms of the penalties and assessed penalties, there's no interest on non-paid. It's just a straight penalty if somebody fails to pay their utility fee. So it wouldn't be like the taxes where we're gonna charge interest on delinquent taxes plus a penalty.
I'll have to double check that.
I was curious, because what I'm actually kind of wondering is the appeal process gonna bring those appeals to here ultimately, or to the BCA?
Well, it would have a multi-step approach, like most appeals. So if a non-residential property owner wanted to appeal it, first there'd be an administrative appeal
Right.
at the staff level, if you
Right.
will. If that's resolved, it keeps it out of board-level hands. If it's not resolved, then it starts to come up through the system. I don't recall if it comes to this board or the,
I didn't see that, and I was just looking. I was just curious because
I believe it does eventually come to you.
we're the ultimate
You're the
quote court of
ultimate,
appeal.
Yeah.
Because that, I'm just anticipating a lot of potential issues coming before the
Yep.
board, which we might want to think about. How are we going to handle that?
Will every town in the state be required to have such a plan? And will it include all rural acreage?
well, it's been a huge point of discussion statewide about where the points of leverage are in terms of water quality improvements. So towns like the ones we cited in Chittenden County that have more impervious, we felt the need to set up this more complicated approach. A rural town where maybe most of the land is in farmland or undeveloped land might have very different needs or mandates under state and federal law. We're all under it in some form. I mean, there are communities on the other side of the Green Mountains that are saying, why do we have to participate at all? Our drainage goes to the Connecticut River. It has nothing to do with Lake Champlain and phosphorus.
Right.
So it's a complicated topic for sure.
Yeah, on page 24G, it specifies that the select board shall review such appeal at a meeting. Oh,
But it's a good question, not that you want to push work off to somebody else, but is this board the best
The right
place, or should it go to the board, the BCA?
Yeah.
That's a
Maybe-
change we can make as a part of this hearing process if deemed necessary or appropriate.
Well, I don't know. Just something to think about.
Absolutely.
The last question I had is who approves the credits? I was trying to, is that just through the water department? If, say, the Shelburne Farms thinks that they have a credit-worthy project, do they submit it to the water department?
It would be submitted to me, and it would go through, we'd hire a consultant to
Oh, I see.
look at, because we don't have that technical
I was wondering
expertise yet.
about that, yeah, okay. All right.
any questions for Lee? Chris Robinson, the superintendent? Hearing none, Mike? Mary?
I just want to express my gratitude to the committee and also to Lee. I know the committee has put a lot of work into this. They did so and have been doing so for a number of years now. They came before us last year, and we felt that it wasn't ready for prime time, and without any struggle or resistance, the committee went back and worked even further. So I really appreciate that. I think they've done a great job, and Lee, I want to commend you for your really thorough and organized and easy to understand presentation. And I do hope that you have time to present it to town meeting on Monday.
Thanks.
Yeah, we
Appreciate
are
that.
planning that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chris Robinson certainly deserves credit, along with Tom, for the work they've put into this as well. It's a heavy
Yeah,
lift.
that's true, yeah.
Any
Thank you.
further questions? Hearing none, our next step will be to, upon a motion to recess the hearing until March 24th,
Yes, please.
at which point we would expect to conclude the hearing and potentially approve the ordinance. Is there a motion to that effect?
Mary just.
Mary moves,
I'll second.
Mike seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you very
Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Chris.
Lee. The next item is to review proposed stormwater management project, and I think this is the Velco, correct, now that we have a bid?
That's correct. So just to give you a quick overview, we went out to bid last week and we got contractor bids. The lowest bid was $578,630 for construction. We have other costs associated with the project. For instance, there's a construction contingency in there. We have an engineer oversight of the construction project, which is a requirement of the funding agency. We can't use the design engineer, we have to use another engineer, so there's a contract for that. So when you include all the other additional costs, the total cash needed is what I'll say is what we'll request from the state for the grant will be approximately $679,000. We'll probably request $680,000 from the state. As you're aware, there's a 50% match to that. We currently have through the Burlington self-storage easement, the Blue Links easement, and the Velco license, which we have already acquired legally, which has a value to it, which the state is allowing us to use as a match, along with a few other smaller grants, 2 other grants that we had in the $20,000 range, which gives us up to $706,000 for a match. So we more than have the 50% that we need for the $680,000 match.
Good news.
So I guess tonight is just to approve the funding and the request for the funding, so we can get that grant from the state for $680,000.
Is there a motion to approve the request as presented?
We're moving to approve a request for $680,000.
Correct.
I'll move to approve the request for $680,000 for the Velco constructed wetlands project.
Thank you. Mike moves.
I'll second.
Mary seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed,
Aye.
nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mary.
Yep.
The next item is town meeting preparation, the subject we've already introduced. Lee and I developed a little program which will include some recognitions as well as a presentation by Lee, and I'm sure with Peter's help on budget. And later, in the concluding portion of the meeting, we thought to have a brief presentation on the utility and as well a fire rescue facility status, so everybody's clear on when and what to expect no later than Election Day next November on that project, so everybody's up to speed. No. You want to comment any further?
Just that we're coordinating with the moderator, Tom Little, so he's aware of the sequence. We'll have the Hague Award. We might have, and some other things, but it's all coming together for Monday night.
We had talked earlier in the year about a volunteer recognition portion. Are we?
That's still our theme. As you can see, it's expressed in the town report, and I'm sure that'll be the greater part of our introductory remarks. We're anticipating maybe asking every volunteer to stand up,
Yeah, that would be nice.
which would be neat. And he's discussed with staff the utility of being there, whether resident or not, which I think is a great idea.
Yeah, I do
And
too.
but we're going to try to underline the value and the importance, critical importance of volunteers to the town. Something that won't stop with town meeting, but it's an opportunity to have more people here than usual, so.
Would it be, well, I guess we have I was just thinking listing all the CVCs,
Yeah,
but I guess be nice, I always want to point out to people how many we have.
yeah, exactly.
And the need for
And,
staff.
and we've encouraged tables.
I can put something
Yeah.
together to present, so that we can show and as a part of that discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, great, yeah.
There, the Hague Award will be made. We have another recognition along with it, as possibly two. And I think the idea is to make it as much of an exchange with the community as you can, given the formality of it. I mean, it doesn't have to be, there doesn't have to be much distance between all of us who live here and town meeting. I mean, we could make it more of an exchange of ideas and encourage questions, certainly on budget. And again, the principal theme is going to be volunteers. So I thought that really worked out well
Good.
as a dedication in the annual report. For those of you who may not know, the annual report is dedicated to the volunteer, who, except for Max, shall remain anonymous. So, okay, we'll continue on that, and but I think we're pretty confident we're going to be ready.
Yes.
And those of you who can and are interested in the event, the dinner, will probably find, as we did last year, that the table by table presentations by our elected representatives, the state reps, and was very useful last year. People were very pleased at it, felt they learned a great deal. This was in lieu of, in prior years, of a group kind of sitting at one table. And instead, for those of you who were not able to be there, they broke it up into 5 or 6, 7 tables, I guess. And you could kind of migrate to one table or another, and the representatives went around and sat with you. So it was 8 or 9, 6 people instead of 50 or 60. And that's going to repeat this year, and I thought that was very successful. And our body of representation are very much looking forward to it and interested in themselves. So, okay, any other questions? Hearing none. The next item is the Shelburnewood CDBG Grant application, and we are being asked to sign a resolution. Do you want to introduce this?
Sure, thank you. So the Select Board had previously endorsed a community development block grant application by Shelburnewood Mobile Home Co-op, the purpose being to assess the feasibility of expanding the co-op and adding more housing units. As often happens with state and federal programs, there's an endless parade of paperwork that comes along with these things. The board is now being asked to sign a resolution that just says, we have the authority to apply for this. These tend to be pass-through grants, so legally the town is the applicant, but the town passes that money on through to the entity that's seeking it. So this is a resolution simply saying we have the authority to do this. We have a document from the Regional Planning Commission that it's consistent with the regional plan, that I can be the authorizing agent to get into the grant program, and that we agreed to and have already endorsed this. It does require actual signatures. So it's really a pro forma endorsement of what we've already done. So a motion to adopt this and sign it would be helpful.
Hey, as long as the paperwork keeps coming, actually, you're better off when it stops. That's when you get a little concerned.
Indeed.
Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll move to endorse the
Resolution.
resolution.
As presented.
As presented, thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
I will second.
And Mary seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. Thank you, Mary. The next item has been rescheduled to March 10. The following item are liquor license renewals, which in our current practice we have gathered in one place.
Yes.
Do you want to review, at least maybe to give some indication of the different classes? And
Sure. So under state rules, it's a peculiar thing. The state actually issues liquor licenses to establishments, but gives some level of review to local entities. So the Select Board, acting as a liquor control, the local Liquor Control Commission, can review make a recommendation to the state. The state's not bound to follow that, but nonetheless. So there are 4 different types of licenses. Some establishments apply for one or several of them. There's a first-class license, which would be the typical, I run a restaurant, I want to be able to serve alcohol at the table. Second-class licenses, more of a retail entity like Jiffy Mart or Kinney Drug, selling certain types of alcohol. Third-class licenses involve places like Bangkok Minute Thai Cafe, Bark Eaters in at Shelburne Farms. Again, some entities are applying for multiple types of licenses. And then there's outside consumption. If you have outdoor tables within a restricted area that approved by the state, then you can get a license to serve outside. Archie's is one of several that do that. The Golf Club, Peg and Terrors, Rustic Roots. So we have a whole list of these, whether you'd like me to read them all or you're comfortable with them as you've seen them in writing.
No, I think you might read them for the benefit of the public.
Sure.
And then our next step is to convene ourselves as a Liquor Control Commission.
You might want to do that.
Why don't we do that
No,
now?
no,
Is there a
no,
motion
yes.
to that effect?
I'll move to convene as the Liquor License Commission.
Mike moves,
Second?
Mary seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Does the town get any revenue from the various establishments passed back to us by the state?
Not directly as a result of these, no. The state has a rooms and meals and alcohol tax that goes to the state, but the town does not receive direct
Right.
benefit. other
There's no
than-
yield from the licensing
Okay.
revenues, no?
Right.
Like the Route 7 deli, I mean, they sell hard liquor, so obviously they're paying a lot of revenue to the state. They don't give the town a percentage of that.
Not at this time, no.
You should go after it.
There are ways to do that, involves a much bigger conversation.
Yeah, right.
for another day.
That translates to local sales tax if
Yes.
you.
Right.
So applying for a first-class liquor license, Archie's Grill, Bangkok Minute Thai Cafe, Bark Eaters, Cucina Antica, Heart of the Village Inn at Shelburne Farms, Quinny Club, Quiniesca Golf Club, Peg and Terrors, Rustic Roots, Village Wine and Coffee, and Waterfront Catering Group. Applying for a second-class license, and these are under business names, so if you don't recognize something, they're applying under their legal business name, not necessarily the person or the
What
place.
is a second-class license?
Second-class license, these are retail sales, so Jiffy Mart, the Kinney Drug, Shelburne Country Store, Shelburne Gift Company, Shelburne Grocery, Shelburne Meat Market, Village Wine and Coffee. Third-class license, Bangkok Minute Thai Cafe, Bark Eaters, at Shelburne Farms, Quiniesca Golf Club, Peg and
These are
Terrace,
outside service.
Rustic Roots, and Waterfront Catering Group. So that's the third class. And then outside consumption, Archie's Grill, Bangkok Minute Thai Cafe, Bark Eaters, Heart of the Village Inn, Quinny Club, Quiniesca Golf Club, Peg and Terrors, and Rustic Roots. And we have asked the police chief if they have had any problems with any of these establishments, and the answer was none, which I'm pleased to report. It's not always that way in other towns.
Lee, this is the most we've had in one. Is there a standard rollover timeframe that?
The rollover comes in the next couple of months, but many apply early and get
I
it
see.
done. You may recall in past years, we've had a blizzard of paperwork and each individual application was circulated and you'd
Right.
spend 20 minutes signing. So last year I asked, wasn't there a simpler way to do this? And indeed, the state will accept this kind of approach.
Great.
So it just keeps it a lot simpler at this stage.
Sure, yeah, this is great.
Any questions, discussion?
Yeah, do you need my signature?
Well, I did talk to the town clerk in advance on this, knowing you'd be away, and since the record and the minutes will reflect, presuming your approval, we can sign on your behalf on the resolution and on this
Thank you.
There will be more opportunities for more liquor licenses over the coming months.
Thanks.
Our next step is to move and vote to resume general session. Is there a motion to that effect?
We don't vote
Should
on
we-
this?
Yeah, we will,
Should
once
we
we're,
vote on it?
you know, while we're a commission?
I think that would be.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the licenses as presented?
I'll move,
So moved.
Mary moves,
I'll second.
Mike seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed,
Aye.
nay. And at this point, we'll anticipate a motion to resume general session,
So moved.
which Mike moves,
Second.
Mary seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Thank you. Thank you. We are about to enter executive session, from which we will return without comment at some point. We appreciate everybody coming this evening. You're more than welcome to remain, but our business is pretty well done for the evening. Is there a motion to enter executive session in our usual two steps?
Yes, I'll move pursuant to 1 VSA Section 313 to find that premature general public knowledge of the town's position in a pending labor relations agreement negotiation with employees would place the town clearly at a substantial disadvantage.
I'll second.
Mary moves and Mike seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those
Aye.
opposed, nay.
And second, I would move pursuant to 1 VSA Section 313 to enter into executive session to evaluate the town's position in a pending labor relations agreement with employees and to invite the finance director and town manager to participate.
I'll second.
Moved by Mary, seconded by Mike. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. Thank you. Thank you, Mary.